Okay, so since we understand how to compute maturity date, right now how to compute our interest on your slide 116. How to get interest? Remember that? How? Principal times annual interest rate times the period. So what does it mean, the period? How long you borrow the money, okay? So how to get your interest? The principal. Face value of the note means the principal 本金。Times annual interest rate, you should understand, times annual interest rate, you got the interest for 1 year, okay? So this is for 1 year interest. But maybe you borrow the money not for 1 year, maybe only 3 months, only 6 months, right? So don't forget, you had to consider how long, what's the period you borrow, okay? So the last one, always, you will forget. So please don't forget the last part. Always, you will forget it. 期间. So what does it mean? The period you borrow the money, you owe the money. Okay? 欠款期间，借款期间。So that's how we find out the interest you need to pay, okay? So for 3 cases, $370, that's a principal, right? 本金. For 12% is for 1 year. But remember, the interest you need to pay depends on how long you borrow the money, right? So that's why I told you, you owe the money only 120 days. Based on days, that is easier for you to consider days, okay? So since we express it in days, so means what? You consider it in days. It's easier for you to calculate your interest, okay? So when for interest, you had to pay it only 120 days. So how much? $29.20. What if we express it in months? Then it's easier for you to compute in months. So based on 12 months, you owe the money only 6 months. Okay? Any questions? No problem, right? Always last part. You should be careful. Always you will forget the last part. Okay? Times. You have to consider how long you owe the money. So please don't forget this part. 借款期间。Okay, no problem, right? Okay, since you don't have problems, so let's look at some cases for you guys. So first case on slide 117. What happened? Your company, not your company, another company wrote a note. So here is promise note. So right here, promise note. Another company wrote a note. Remember, for note, always we have 3 basic promises. Okay, so the numbers before the note is the promises. So what's the first promise? $1,000 about principal. So this is the first promise. About the principal 本金。They promise to pay you money, $1,000. When? 2 months, right? So second promise, maturity date. 到期日。And remember, nothing for free. When we talk about note, always don't forget interest. So here told you 12%. So this is a third promise. We didn't mention how long, then we assume this for 1 year. So annual interest rate 12%.年利率。Okay, so another company wrote a note, give you a note. Why? To settle and open account. When we tell you open account, we mean accounts receivable. Okay, so to settle and open account means accounts receivable. So open account means accounts receivable. So what happened? Customers owe you money, accounts receivable, and they need to pay the money back today, but they cannot. Okay, so what happened today? Customer cannot pay the money back today, so they use the note to replace accounts receivable. They use the note to give you more promise guarantee. Okay, so settle an account means they cannot pay the money back today, so they use the note customer cannot pay accounts receivable today, so customer give you a written promise. You written promise. Okay, so they cannot pay the money back today. They use note to replace accounts receivable. Okay, so it's the worst case. So what's the worst case? They cannot pay the money today, so they use the note to replace written oral promise. Okay, any questions? So for your company, you got what? You got a note, right? So you got the written promise. You don't have an oral promise anymore. So for your company, you got written promise, you got a note. So customers use the note to replace accounts receivable. So for your company, you got note. Okay, then you don't have oral promise. Any questions? So what's a debit, what's a credit? You got a note, so you have notes receivable, right? You don't have oral promise, So your accounts receivable should be disappear, right? Okay. Any questions? So on slide 111, your notes receivable should be increased. Accounts receivable should be decreased because you got notes and you don't have oral promise anymore. Okay, so what's a debit, what's a credit? Debit, notes receivable. Credit, accounts receivable. Any questions? No problem. At this moment, do we need to consider interest on the first day when you got a note? You don't need to. Why? Remember, what's the key factor about interest? Key factor about interest. Time. Remember, when we calculate interest based on the time, if you owe the money longer, you should pay more interest. So time decide the interest. Okay. So today on first day, why we don't consider interest? Because it's the first day. The time haven't passed, haven't happened yet. Okay. So later on, after 2 months, when the time passed, don't forget you have to consider interest. So later on, when time passed, okay, don't forget interest incurred happened. (时间经过，利息就产生了。Okay, so after 2 months at the maturity date, how much money you can get? Don't forget, principal, the first promise, and interest, the second promise, right? So don't forget you got principal and interest. For interest, don't forget always the period. Don't forget it. Sometimes you will forget the period. Okay, any questions? No problem? Okay, no problem then. Since you understand the concept, so what's the journal entry we use to record May 1st and July 1st, okay? So on May 1st, you got a note. You don't have an oral promise, right? So what's a debit? What's a credit? Debit, notes receivable. Credit, accounts receivable, okay? So on slide 119, debit, accounts, notes receivable. Credit, accounts receivable, okay? Because customer use the note to replace oral promise. No problem? Okay, so there's a May 1st. How about after 2 months? After 2 months, you got the money, right? So how much money you got? Principal and interest, okay? So after 2 months, you got what? $1,020. Why? Because there's a principal and interest. So you got principal and interest. 本金加利息。Okay? So since you got principal and interest, customer don't owe you money anymore, right? So any receivables should be decreased because they don't owe you money anymore. So your principal, not receivable principal, here should be decreased because customer pay the principal to you. And don't forget, at the same time, because of time passed, interest incur, right? So you earn 2 months interest. That's why your interest revenue increase. So interest revenue increase. Why is that? Because time passed, you earned 2 months interest. (赚得2个月利息) Okay, any questions? No problem? Okay, so let's look at another case. Right now, this case is the worst case. Customer cannot pay you money. So they use the note to replace oral promise. So the case we mentioned is the worst case. But let's go back to another case is the normal case. When someone borrow money from you, okay? So you lend the money to debtor, borrower. No problem? Okay. So let's look at slide page 121. Today, you lend the money to someone, to other companies. Then you got a note. Okay? So remember, for the note, we have 3 basic promises. Don't forget. What are these 3 basic promises? First one, principal, 本金. Second one, when pay the money back? After 5 months, maturity date. Third, nothing for free. So what is your interest? So annual interest rate 9%. Okay, based on this, don't forget 2 extra works we have to do when we talk about note. So what are these 2 extra things you have to do? Maturity date, interest. So when they write down the note on June 1st, right? June 1st, their promise is how long? After 5 months. So same day after 5 months. Start from June 1st, right? June 1st and July, August, September, October, November. Okay? So maturity date, same day after 5 months is November 1st. So what's the interest? Principal, $10,000. Annual interest rate 9%. But how long? Only 5 months. So the interest is $375. Okay? Any questions? No problem? So after you know the maturity date, after you know what's the interest for 5 months, $375. Okay? So We just write down the situation. June 1st, your company lend the money to debtor, borrower, got a note. So what's a debit? What's a credit? Debit? Note receivable. Credit? Cash. You got a note. Your cash decrease because you give the cash to borrower. Okay? So you got a note. Cash decrease because you got a note. Cash decrease because you lend the cash to borrower. Okay, so debit, not receivable. Credit, cash. Any questions? Do we need to consider interest? We don't need to. Why? Because it's the first day. So the time is the key factor, right? So only first day, we don't need to consider interest. Okay? Then, after 5 months, time passed, interest incurred happen, right? So how much money you got? Principal $10,000, interest $375. Okay. So on maturity day November 1st, you got what? Oh, you got what? Please go to slide 124. You got what? You got the cash. When? You are lucky. So here, at the maturity date, did you get the cash or not? Depends on you are lucky or not, right? Because when someone owe you money, always we have a what? Risk. Maybe they won't pay the money back, right? So it's not necessary always 100% you can get the cash, right? So we have to consider at the maturity date. What if you are lucky, got the cash? What if you are unlucky, you didn't get the cash? Okay? So case 1, honor 兑现 means what? You are lucky, you got the cash. Second 2, dishonor 未兑现 means what? You are unlucky, so you didn't get the cash. Okay, so at the maturity date, we have to consider you're lucky or not. Okay? So based on the time, I think today you are lucky because we only have a time for case 1. So you are unlucky for next week. So if you are lucky, so you should be very happy. Means what? Today you are lucky. So you got the cash. Okay? So when you got the cash, on slide page 126. So we mentioned you are lucky, you got the cash, okay? So borrower give you the cash. Total amount of money you got is principal plus interest, right? So debit, cash, principal plus interest. And credit, notes receivable. For that note, $10,000 because they pay the money back, right? And you earn interest, 5 months interest. So at the maturity day, you got principal and interest because you are lucky. And they don't owe you money, so your principal should be decreased. Also, you earned 5 months interest. Okay, any questions? No problem, right? It's quite easy, simple. When they pay you money back after 5 months, at the same time, you are lucky. No problem? Then I will tell you, what if actually more normal case. What if in the middle, in between, we had to prepare financial statements? This is more common, more normal situation. Before maturity day, you had to prepare financial statements. What happened? Go back to your chapter 3 or chapter 4. When we talk about adjusting entry, 调整分录. So, in between, we had to prepare financial statements. Then, what should we do? We had to report everything, right? So, before financial statement, what happened? What happened? Don't forget, June 1st to September 30, July, August, September. June, July, August, September. See, it's quite difficult to count the months. Should be very careful. So, time passed. For 4 months. Okay, so what should we do? Time passed for 4 months. What happened? Interest incurred. Okay, so don't forget about your interest. Okay, so time passed, interest incurred. Did you get the money yet? No, because it's not maturity date. So interest incurred at the same time, you didn't get the cash. So they owe you interest. Okay, so go back to chapter 3 or 4. Adjusting entry, 调整分录. Please, on September 30, you should recall what happened. 4 months interest incurred happened, but you didn't get it. Okay? So on slide 128, what happened? 4 months incurred happened. 4 months, how much? Principal times annual interest rate times 4 months. Okay? So based on 4 months, interest $300. Did you get the money yet? Not yet. So you should tell them interest incurred. Interest incurred. You earn the interest. So interest revenue increase. How much? $300. Did you get it? No. So they owe you interest. So I have interest receivables increase $300. Okay? 应收利息. So you earn the interest. But you didn't get. But they owe you interest. Okay, didn't get the cash.应收利息. Any questions? So that's only for September 30 when we are going to prepare financial statements. No problem? Okay, since no problem we've done on September 30, then time continue to maturity date. So on maturity date, what happened? Don't forget, what happened? Time passed for how long? 1 month. So 2 things happened. What's that? First is time passed. For 1 month. Second is what? You are lucky. Today you are lucky. So you got cash. for principal and 5-month interest. Okay, any questions? So you should tell them you got the cash, principal, and 5-month interest. And don't forget, we still have a 1 month passed. So 1 month passed means what? You earned 1 month interest. Okay? Any questions? No? No problem? Okay. So at the maturity day, what should we do? You should tell them you got the cash, principal, and 5-month interest. Then you have a 1 month interest incurred happen. Since you are lucky, you got all the cash. Do they owe you money? No more. So all the receivables should be disappear, decrease. Okay. So at the maturity day, since we tell you you are lucky, so first you should tell them you got cash for principal plus 5-month interest. Second thing, 1 month pays right here, right? So you should tell them 1 month interest incurred. Third, what happened? Since they pay the money to you, so they don't owe you money anymore, right? So all the receivables should be decreased. So all receivables should be decreased. Okay, all receivable means what? All receivables. So you have to go back to look at your notes, receivables, and interest receivables. Okay? All receivables decrease because they don't owe you money anymore, right? And you got the cash. Also, 1 month passed, interest incurred happened. Any questions? So that's a concept we have. Please go to your notes on page 40. Finish, you can go home. Note on page 40. We talk about you are lucky. Oh, you want to go home?